Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you today to our study on the Hebraic roots of Christianity. We are doing a study on what the rabbis teach about the 10 tribes, and in this program we are going to look at who are the 10 tribes. And I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Yair Davidi, and we are in Jerusalem. Yair Davidi is an Orthodox Jew, and he spends his full time doing research on the 10 tribes. And he is uniquely qualified to share with us what Judaism believes about the 10 tribes and what the rabbis teach about the 10 tribes. So Yair, we welcome you to the program today. And so I'd like to discuss with you exactly what is the Jewish view of the 10 tribes. And first of all, I'd like to share with our audience this book that you wrote. The book is Ephraim, the Gentile Children of Israel. And so here in the title of the book, Yair, you are stating that Ephraim is non-Jewish. Now, is that your view, or is it the view of the rabbis that Ephraim is non-Jewish?
No, this is the rabbinical view. This is the view found in the Talmud, in Yevamot 17. It's also found in Midrashim. It's also, this is also explicitly mentioned in the Bible, the book of Hosea, in the book of Jeremiah, in Isaiah, and confirmed, as if to say, as if it needed confirmation by rabbinical commentaries on the relevant passages.
So most people believe that all the 12 tribes are Jews, but you are telling me that rabbinical sources, as well as the Bible, if we look closely at the book of Hosea, that they are non-Jews. So tell us about Yevamot 17 in the Talmud. It tells us that when the 10 tribes return, they would have the halakhic status of non-Jews. Now what does that mean?
It means that in effect today, someone who is descended from the lost tribes of Israel, if he could theoretically prove it, and it cannot be proven to 100% certainty in individual cases, no individual can come along and say he descends from lost tribes, and he has absolutely proof. But if theoretically he could do so, even so he would not be considered Jewish according to the halakha. He would not be obligated by the law. If a Sanhedrin were to exist, for instance, and he were to publicly desecrate the Shabbat, he would not be put to death, because he would not be considered halakhically Jewish, therefore not obligated by the law, and he would be absolved from it. He would also not be unable to marry a Jewish woman, but he could marry a Gentile woman, whereas an ordinary Jew could not do. In other words, he is absolutely free from all of the commandments that distinguish the Jews from other people. Even so, he eventually, in the end times, Judah and Joseph will reunite, and this distinction or this suspension of the law as applying to the lost tribes, applying to Joseph, will no longer exist. There will be one people and one law will apply to all of them.
And the reason why this is so is because according to the halakha, if the 10 tribes are not Jewish, the rabbis teach that it's the Jews who are to keep the Torah, and so since the 10 tribes would be non-Jewish until they are seen as being Jewish by the rabbis would not see that they need to follow the Torah until such as so. Is that correct?
Yes, but actually in the Bible, for instance, Jeremiah says, I have divorced you in Jeremiah 3 and 31. Also, Hosea mentions the lost tribes being considered non-Jewish or non-Israelite or without the law for a certain period of time.
I'm sorry, what you're talking about in Jeremiah 3:8, it talks about the northern tribes being given divorce, and then in Hosea chapter 1, through the children that are mentioned there, they are regarded as not my people. Yes. So, continue.
Exactly, and this state of suspension, as if to say, will continue for an indefinite time, until the Messianic era, until the Messiah comes back, or a period before then. We cannot say. We can only say what the abilities that we have today that exist within our power today. Legally, they are not considered Jewish.
So, if the 10 tribes are not Jewish, why do so many people view in their minds that the 12 tribes are all Jewish? How come people and most Christians think in their mind that all 12 tribes today are regarded as being Jewish? Why do they think that, if you're telling me that according to the rabbinical understanding that right now in being assimilated in the nations of the world and being divorced and being not my people, that they have the halakhic status of non-Jews? Why is that so?
So this is a conceptual misunderstanding, miscomprehension. It is understandable. It also exists amongst Jewish people, and incidentally amongst the Jewish people we do have representative members of all of the tribes. The majority tribes of the present-day Jewish people are Judah, Benjamin and Levi, with small representative minorities of the other tribes, which are also Jewish and are also Jews as anybody else. Historically, anyone who was in the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel was consisted of 12 tribes, split into 2 different sections. The northern section had 10 tribes, the southern section 2 tribes. The northern section was conquered by the Assyrians and taken into exile and disappeared. It happened that amongst the northern section there were small portions from Judah, but they too are considered as part of the northern tribes. And on the other hand, there were also amongst the southern tribes there were small representative minorities from the northern tribes. But they too, these minorities, are considered part of the southern kingdom of Judah. Everyone who is in the southern kingdom of Judah, is Jewish. They represent the core element of the Jewish population today. From them grew the Jewish people as we know it. The other tribes disappeared. They were taken into exile, taken to places which we're not certain exactly where they were, or even if we are. They moved on from those areas. They assimilated amongst the peoples around them. Even before their time of exile, there were pagans. They had gone in the ways of the nations around them. They weren't exactly Jewish in our sense, in the popular concept of the term. And they lost their identity. They lost knowledge of their identity, and in the eyes of the other peoples, the recognition as to who they were has also disappeared. So it is as if they went away, like a lot of nations in nation history also disappeared. Also, we don't know who they are. And most nations of nation history, of our nation times, we don't know where they are today. But nevertheless, the Bible tells us, historical records tell us, rabbinical sources tell us, from all different sources, we see the lost dream tribes as physical entities, as concrete physical entities, polities that were coherent and were moved in bodies of people. We can trace these bodies of people to specific nations as they moved through to the north and to the west, to Western Europe, and they became elements or determinative elements within specific nations, and also influenced greatly the national qualities of the places in which they dwelt.
So once again, the things that you're explaining to me the Jewish view. You're an Orthodox Jew, and you spend your full time studying this issue and sharing this information with others, trying to get the word out regarding who the 10 tribes are. Once again, is this your personal view, or is your view that you're represented, is this what the rabbis teaches? Is this the Orthodox Jewish view, or is it your personal view?
It is both. I'll qualify. I'll explain to you exactly what is a Jewish view and what aspects of it are influenced by my own personal outlook. The Jewish view is that the lost 10 tribes disappeared, that they are halakhically considered non-Jewish, but in the end times they will return, and they will, as it says in Ezekiel 37, they will return and they will reunite with Judah. For the time being, they are exiled. They are somewhere amongst the Gentile nations. That is the majority Jewish view. There are dissenting voices, other people have different opinions, but that the majority of Jewish sages, that is what they say.
And the Talmud itself says in Yevamot 17b that halakhically they would be regarded as non-Jewish.
Expressly. That is also found in the Shulchan Aruch, incidentally, the Jewish code of law.
Okay, and so that's the official Jewish view, and so it is
it's obligatory.
So the things that you're sharing with me, then what the rabbis teach, the view, or is there any part of what you're teaching me your personal opinion?
No, none of that. That is the official legal view, and every religious Jew is in effect obligated to accept that.
Okay, so the other thing that you was just explaining is that there was an intermingling of the tribes. So when we're saying that the 10 tribes are not Jewish, we're not saying that every one who was of the 10 tribes never had any interaction or connection with Judah or the Jewish people or the house of Judah or the southern kingdom. You're telling me there was and there is intermingling among the tribes of all 12 tribes. Is that correct?
Historically, yes. And what I told you is based on the explanation of Nachmanides, Ramban, in his book of redemption, the Sefer Agula.
So Nachmanides, who's Nachmanides?
He was a famous biblical exegete, a commentator on the Bible.
In what period of time?
About the 1200s CE.
So in the Middle Ages.
The Middle Ages, and he was an authority. He's one of the major authorities in Jewish thought, in Jewish commentary, and Jewish understanding of the Bible. Also Jewish legal understanding. He's a major legal commentator, major legal expert.
So did the Jewish people study what Nachmanides?
They studied him then. They still study him now in the yeshivot, in the Jewish, in the kollels, and people, Jewish authorities. If you're sitting on a Jewish lesson in legal jurisprudence, you will often hear Nachmanides quoted as an authority. So, why did I say all this? Because Nachmanides on the Bible, his understanding of the Bible, and actually what I'm saying, this is not his personal opinion either. This is what the Bible itself says.
So he wrote a book.
The fact that he says it adds a little bit more strength to it than if I would say that just out of my own simple comprehension, because I might be mistaken, but it's unlikely that someone like him would.
Okay, so he said this in his commentaries on the Bible, on the Torah, using rabbinical sources, etc. But he also wrote a book on this subject, and that book is called The Book of Redemption, correct?
Yes.
And so what is it that he explained in this book?
So he explained the whole subject of lost 10 tribes altogether. He explained first of all those 10 tribes definitely are exiled. They disappeared in the north, someplace in the north, in Safat, in northwest Europe. He especially says that. He also says that they eventually will return, and he says that people who claim that the prophecies concerning lost 10 tribes have been fulfilled in biblical times don't know what they're talking about. They will not fulfill everything concerning lost 10 tribes is in the future, and the tribes will return, will reunite with Judah, but they have not yet done so. He also says that we have to understand the biblical terminology. Biblical terminology says you have the northern kingdom of Israel and you have the southern kingdom of Judah. Everyone in the kingdom of Judah is considered part of Judah. Doesn't matter what tribe they came from. That includes there was a tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin. Most of the Levites, as it tells in the book of Chronicles, also joined the southern tribe of Judah. Also there were people from Ephraim, Manasseh, and from all of the other tribes who lived in Jerusalem, who lived amongst the Jewish people, and they remained in Judah. They too are considered part of Judah. Halakhically they are Jewish. On the other hand, everyone in the northern kingdom is considered part of the lost 10 tribes, of the 10 tribes of Israel, and went into exile with the Assyrians. Every Israelite who went into exile, who was taken into exile by the Assyrians, including people from Judah, are considered part of those 10 tribes and have the same status as they do.
Okay, so are there those from the house of Judah that they've intermingled with the northern kingdom as well?
Exactly, yes.
And in doing so, did they ultimately, by intermingling with the 10 tribes who were scattered in the nations and living amongst the nations, would those of the house of Judah that had did that, would they have lost their Jewishness through the intermingling?
No, they have the legal status of someone from the 10 tribes of Israel. In other words, they are not obligated by the law. I'm
talking about those from Judah that went with the 10 tribes that got intermingled.
Exactly. They have exactly the same status as the others. Those people from the 10 tribes, other Israelites from the 10 tribes with whom they intermingled. They will eventually receive, in the time of the Messiah will tell every Israelite or a body appointed by the Messiah will be in charge of informing every Israelite to what tribe they belong to, and whosoever belongs to Judah will be told they belong to Judah. Whosoever belongs to, also amongst the Jews, those who belong to other tribes will be told that, and eventually everyone will go back and rejoin their tribes. As it says in the book of Ezekiel, explains how in the end times every Israelite will settle amongst in his own tribal entity, amongst the tribes he belongs to. Each tribe will receive his territorial portion within the greater land of Israel. And also says incidentally that even non-Israelites who have lived amongst the Israelites and identified with the Israelites, they too will receive a portion according to the tribe that they have dwelt amongst.
Okay, so what you're telling me is the rabbis teach that when the Messiah comes, that he's going to tell individuals what tribe that they were from. Yes, those who were descended from the 12 tribes.
That in the Maimonides, he was also a great Jewish. He also lived in about the 1100s. Incidentally, he lived about the time of Richard the Lionhearted in the Crusades. He was a personal physician to Saladin, who was the famous, people know the story of Robin Hood and his merry men, and Richard the Lionhearted and bad King John and Saladin in the Crusades. So Maimonides was the personal physician to Saladin, and in addition to this, he was also a very famous Jewish legal expert, probably the foremost Jewish expert who ever existed. And he says especially that at the time of the Messiah, every Israelite will be informed as to what tribe he belongs to. And the first tribe that will be so informed will be from the tribe of Levi.
Okay, and the understanding that the first tribe that would know who they're from, that's in Malachi. There's a reference to that, is it right?
Yes, and also in Zechariah.
Okay, and so once again, this is not your personal view. This is what the rabbis teach on the subject.
The rabbis teach, and the rabbis are not also that's from the understanding of the Bible, of biblical passages.
Okay, and so because individuals don't have the recording of the history of their genealogy on an individual basis, if someone is from the 10 tribes, they probably don't know which specific tribe that they were from, because there's been a lot of intermarriage and intermingling.
No one can be absolutely certain.
Right, so that's why ultimately the rabbis teach us the Messiah who's going to come and say, you're from this tribe, you're from that tribe.
Yes, but
okay.
Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
But we can, even though no one can know that for 100% be absolutely certain that they are from the lost tribes of Israel or not, and even if they are, they cannot be certain to what tribes they belong to. We can home in on a certain areas of probability. We have been able to show that even lost tribes in their places of exile.
Circumstantial evidence.
A lot of it. So a lot of circumstantial evidence, which can in some cases direct very strongly in certain directions.
But the Messiah ultimately will make it clear.
Yeah, make it absolutely sure.
So the other thing that you was referring to is, this is Messianic times, Ezekiel chapter 47, verses 21 through 23. It says, "So shall you divide this land unto you according to the tribes of Israel. And it shall come to pass that you shall divide it by lot for an inheritance unto you, and to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall beget children among you, and they shall be unto you as born in the country among the children of Israel. They shall have inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel. And it will come to pass that in what tribe the stranger sojourns, there shall you give him his inheritance, says the Lord God." So we have those who will be of the 12 tribes that the Messiah will say, you're from this tribe, you're from that tribe. But those who are not physically descended from the 12 tribe, the strangers here, the Bible says that in Messianic times that the individual stranger who's joined himself to the 12 tribes of Israel, that they will be given an inheritance with the tribe. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's what Ezekiel says.
So it's just not specifically the literal physical descendants of the 12 tribes themselves, but we have strangers that sojourns with them, and they're a partaker of the inheritance with them.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is...
can I just say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
But even so, what you said is correct, 100% correct. There is a tendency amongst some followers of this line of thought to overemphasize the figurative, the parabolism,
the spiritual
aspects. The physical aspect also exists. That there are physical descendants of all of the tribes of Israel, and that is where the Bible places its emphasis upon.
Okay, so the next thing I want you to share with us is does Judaism believe that the 12 tribes have already been united, or were they united in the days of the kings? Or is the uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel a future event that's associated with Messianic times?
No, the future reunification is to be in the future. That is what Judaism says. This is what all Jewish authorities, as far as I know, say. There were attempts in the times of Jeremiah to facilitate a reunification in the time of King Josiah. And other times, perhaps, but nothing came with them.
In other words, what you're saying is King Josiah had asked Jeremiah to go out and to facilitate the uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel, making them aware who they are, bring them back to the land, but it ultimately didn't happen.
No, they did not. Nothing permanent resulted from it. There was an attempt by some Scythian peoples, who we identified the lost 10 tribes, to come back, and they did settle. They did establish more settlements in the land of Israel. They did help King Josiah to rule over the lands he had conquered. But after his death, they also left. They returned to where they had come from.
So, 3 times a day, Jews pray. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, in these prayers, are there any prayers directed about the coming of the Messiah, the Messianic era, and the uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel?
Yes, there is a prayer for the return of the exile. And that prayer has an expression that, according to commentaries, is referring to the return of the 10 tribes. But I should point out to you that most Jews are not aware of this, and the rabbis do not emphasize it. You have to look it up in the relevant books and relevant commentaries on the prayer book to see it.
So if there's a prayer for the gathering of the exiles of Israel, and we have the 10 tribes that are in exile, then that would mean that the prayer to gather the exiles is a prayer to gather the 10 tribes in addition to Judah.
That is how the commentaries explain it, as you have done. But I repeat that the ordinary religious Jew in the street would not be aware of this.
Even though that's really what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, and so also in Mashmia Yeshua, the 4th principle of faith, it says that the return of the 12 tribes is a fundamental principle of Jewish faith. Is that correct?
Yes, that is a
Could you explain that?
So this is a book, Mashmia Yeshua, the announcement of redemption, by Don Isaac Abarbanel.
And what does Mashmia mean?
Mashmia means to make known, announce.
Okay.
From the word shmir, to give a voice unto.
Okay.
Make it heard. Announce. In other words, an announcement of redemption.
Okay.
By Abarbanel, Don Isaac Abarbanel, who lived in the time of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, which was also the same period as Columbus discovered America. He himself was also similar to Maimonides, a prominent official to leading kings, to the kings of Spain and Portugal, and after that an advisor to the ruler of the Turkish Empire, and to the Republic of Venice, which at that time was one of the world powers. So he got around, and he also was well read. He read about Jewish works and Christian works. He was for his time, and that time was the time of the Renaissance. He was known as a leading learned erudite person, one of the leading scholars of his time. And he said that not only did he say, other rabbis said, but he is a good example. And he gives as one of the principles of the Bible the belief in the return of the lost 10 tribes. And he says, he expresses his opinion that someone does not believe in this, and in effect is denying Scripture. And therefore is in a very bad state of affairs. He is
so he says,
something that you don't want to do.
So he explained that, he said the 4th principle of Jewish faith is the belief in the uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel in times to come.
He does say that, yes.
And so
I'm not sure if it's my 4th principle. Amongst his 14 principles, that principle is very strongly emphasised, and he elaborates at great length on this subject.
And is it the role and the task of the Messiah to gather and unite the 12 tribes of Israel, or is it just going to happen as we're living our lives? Or does the Messiah have a role to play at all in the gathering and uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel?
No, so these things are for the Messianic age. So we can look at the Bible, and the Bible does say that in the end times those tribes will return. It emphasises it. Isaiah talks about it a lot. The other prophets, all of the prophets, or most of the prophets, also speak of it, according to the rabbinical commentaries. All the other prophets also speak of this, and it definitely is to take place. And also the midrashim and legends and so on. But Maimonides himself emphasized that no one really knows how these things will come about.
But they will be done by the Messiah.
We have to believe they will come about. Yes, or if not necessarily by the Messiah, sometimes in the events leading up to the Messianic era. This is similar to the building of the temple. Some people say the Messiah will build the temple. Some people say the temple has to be rebuilt before the Messiah can come. But everyone agrees that the building of the temple and the Messiah somehow or other will occur around about the same time.
So Maimonides, who put together Jewish law in a work called Mishnah Torah and the Laws of the Kings, and a chapter there in the Laws of the Coming of the Messiah, he said that the Messiah from the house of David will come and gather the 12 tribes of Israel. And so this is Jewish belief and what the rabbis teach about the issue. So we pray that the program has been a blessing to you today. We've talked about who are the 10 tribes, and we've done so looking at it from a Jewish perspective with the help of Yair Davidi, an Orthodox Jew who lives here in Jerusalem. And so remember always these words from 1 John chapter 2 and verse 6. He who says he abides in him, he who says he's a believer in Yeshua as the Messiah, ought himself to walk even as he walked. And how did Yeshua walk or live his life? He followed the Torah of his Father. Even so he commanded us in John chapter 14 verse 15 to do the same. If you love me, keep my commandments. Shalom.